Hi, everybody. Today we are going to be doing our 1.4 notes for pre-algebra, which is covering the topic of multiplying integers. All right. So multiplying positive and negative numbers. Mm. So let's get into it. We're going to start though, because we'll be touching upon this at the bottom. What exactly is an exponent? Okay. Hopefully you've seen it before, but an exponent, s- what it does is it says how many times we use the number in multiplication. Okay. So we express this as, let's say we are doing 5 to the third power. All right, I can say this in this, this could be 5 to the third power. All right, is what we have here. 5 to the third, 5 cubed, you could also say. And what does this mean? This means we're doing 5 times 5 times 5. All right. And just to add a little bit of terminology here, what do I call this 5? I call this 5 the base. And this 3 here, this is that power. This is the exponent power, also here at times called index. Okay. We're going to table this for just a little bit, and then and not get to exponents till later, but we will touch them in this video, in this lesson. Okay. So, as I've said before, here is kind of a definition, a textbook definition, and then of multiplying integers and positive numbers. And then we'll get into how I like to do it. And I have a little acronym I like to use to remember. So with this here, if we are multiplying integers with the same sign, all right, so both positive or both negatives, the product of the two integers with the same sign is always going to be positive, whether it's two positives, whether it's two negatives, all right, 2 times 3 is 6, -2 times -3 is 6. Multiplying integers with different signs, the product of two integers with different signs is always going to be negative. So 2 times -3 is -6. -2 times +3 is also -6. Okay. So the way that I like to remember this is a little acronym. All right. And a little saying. If you love to love, all right, you're going to be a lover. If you love to hate, we're going to call you a hater. All right. It really stinks if you're hating on life there. All right. If you're someone who hates to love, you're going to be a hater. Okay. And if you hate to hate, well, the only people who hate to hate there, hate, is going to be a lover. All right. So what does all this mean? Well, I think of this as love being positivity. All right. So if we're doing associate love and positivity with positive numbers. Love to love, if you're taking a positive number times a positive number, you're going to get a positive number. If you love to hate, all right, I said love means positive numbers. Well, you can probably guess it. I represent hate here as our negative numbers in this. So positive times a negative can get us a hater, negative number. If you hate to love, that negative times the positive here gives you a hater. You're going to be negative. And if you hate to hate, a negative times a negative, you're going to be a lover and a positive. Show positivity. That's what you want. So I use this a lot, and I think it's an easy way of remembering these positive and negative numbers. Okay. So let's get into this here. All right. -5 times -6. All right. I have two negative numbers. I hate to hate. I know I'm going to become a lover. That means my final answer is going to be positive. Gives us 30. All right. Same signs. 3 times -4. Hopefully you've seen when I put the 3 and that -4 in parentheses right next to it. That means multiplication. Positive times a negative. We're going to become a hater and give us a negative number. All right. -12. All right. See here, -7 times 4. Two different signs. All right. Hate to love. -28. Okay. Take a look at these next ones. Let's do them and then check with my answers here. All right. Hopefully they do okay. All right. 5 times 5, two positive numbers. All right. Gives us 25. All right. 4 times 11, two positive numbers, 44. -1 times -9, two negative numbers. So same sign, always positive. That's 1 times 9, 9. All right. Same situation here. -7 times -8, two negative numbers. Hate to hate. You're going to be a lover and gives us 56. All right. 12 times -2. All right. Two different numbers, two different signs here. Okay. So gives us -24. 4 times -6, two different numbers. So negative. And 4 times 6, 24. So -24. 7 and 8 here. Let's look at -10 times -6. Well, let's do order of operations. That's going to give us 60 since they're both negative numbers and thus positive. Well, it doesn't matter what 0 is going to be. It's not really positive or negative, so anything times 0 is 0. All right. These next ones here, all right, um, doesn't matter the order. I'm going to end up going -5 times -4 and have this gives us 20 because that's going to be easier to multiply by -7 in my head. -7 times 20 gives us -140. So any odd situation here of negative numbers is always going to end up being negative because order of operations, you get a love to hate situation or hate to love situation in that. Okay. Let's look at this last little bit. So remember, exponents here talk about how many times we're multiplying that base by. Now, if you're looking at these things, these three examples, you'll notice that there's a little bit of differences with the parentheses. Okay. And what I want you to think about with this is the parentheses and order of operations. Okay. So in this first one, we have -2 in parentheses raised to that power of 2. So it's the whole thing is raised to the second power. Since order of operations, parentheses, then exponents. So we have -2 times -2. Well, -2 times -2 gives us +4. Now, for part B here, when I say evaluate -5 to the second power, what is that exponent raising up? All right. What is the base in this situation? Remember PEMDAS. parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division going either way, addition, subtraction. All right, a negative number in there is going to end up being the multiplication. So we can look at this in this situation as negative 5 times 5 because that second power is just attached to the 5. The negative is not there. So we basically have a situation of negative 1 times 5 times 5. 5 times 5 gives us 25. This equals negative 25. Now, how is that different from this example A? In this situation, negative 2 is the whole thing that is being raised up to the power versus part B here, that second power is just tied to that 5, not the negative part. So C here in this situation, negative 4, all in parentheses cubed, we're raising that negative 4 to the third power. So it stays in there. So negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 gives us 16 times negative 4 again. So what is 16 times 4 is going to give us 64, but we have an odd number of negative values. So negative 64 is our answer. All right. So do these next few, take a look with your partner, take a look on your own, and then let's check. All right. Negative 3 in parentheses raised to the second power, negative 3 times negative 3 gives us 9. 10 here. All right. Negative 2 to the third power. All right. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, but 4 times negative 2 gives us negative 8. Negative 7 to the second power. All right, remember this is negative, not negative 7, it's negative of 7 to the second power. So 7 squared is 49, negative of that, negative 49. Here, negative of 6 to the third power. 6 to the third power is 216. Negative of it gives us negative 216. Note that this is also the same as, in parentheses, negative 6 to the third. And that's it for 1.4 of multiplying integers and thus multiplying positive and negative numbers. Again, what I want you to keep in mind here, outside of the what we just finished with the exponents, is this up here. If you love to love, you're a lover. Love to hate, you're a hater. Hate to love, you're a hater. Hate to hate, you're a lover. If you have integers that you're multiplying that are the same side, it's always going to end up positive. If you have integers that are not the same side, it's always going to end up negative. Have a great day, and I'll catch you all later.